Manx Radio's 1 to 3, tended by Ramsey Garden Centre. Open 7 days a week.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me, Frank?
I can.
Aha. Good morning and greetings from the tiny isle.
Thank you.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm really good, thank you. How's the weather on the Isle of Man?
How is the weather on the Isle of Man? It's all the weather on the Isle of Man. Genuinely, it seems to change every 3 minutes. At the moment, hang on, I'm looking out across the bay. There's waves crashing up across the bay, and it's a bit misty and a bit murky. I'm going to describe it as a bit mucky.
Okay, fair enough.
Hopefully it'll be much better when you get here.
Well, I don't mind a bit of mucky weather.
You've got a sort of minor connection with the Isle of Man, haven't you? Because you've been working with Pierre Novelli.
That's right, yeah. In fact, I would say probably that one of the main reasons that we ended up doing the Isle of Man was for Pierre's benefit, and now he's doing his own tour, so he's not with us.
How rude.
Yeah, exactly. Ungrateful.
Oh dear, that is terrible. But so this is going to be your first time on the Isle of Man, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. Not just as a show, but first time ever. I'm definitely looking forward. I love seeing new places. And just hearing you say looking out across the bay makes me feel excited.
Oh yeah, it is beautiful, I have to say. As much as, as I said, the weather's not always great, but it is a really, really beautiful place and very sort of historical. And am I right in thinking you've got a bit of an interest in George Formby, of course, has some links to the island as well?
Well, of course, yeah. I did a documentary about George Formby, and I am a big fan of his. And there's a statue, isn't there, of him in his TT races gear, I believe.
There is. Are you going to hunt it down and have selfies?
Oh, I hope so. I mean, I haven't quite got my head around how big the island is. So I don't want to assume that you can say, well, I'll just nip to the Gaiety and then I'll have a stroll across to the George Formby statue. It could be 800 miles for all I know.
We're about 3 meters square. You'll be fine.
All right.
No, it is quite near. You'll definitely be. You'll make it. I think you'll make it to pay homage. I'm sure you will. And I have to say, I was listening to you on Radcliffe and McConey last week because I love their show. And speaking of sort of connections with musical people, you aren't half the collector of some interesting stuff and memorabilia, aren't you?
Well, yeah. I've got some George Formby stuff actually.
What?
I've got a book of common prayer that was given out to all the soldiers in World War II, and that's signed by George Formby. And I've got a French franc that was signed by George Formby, and probably most strangely of all, he got engaged towards the end of his life. His wife Beryl, who was his famous wife, had died, and he got engaged. And they never got round to marrying because George died. But she sent a thank you letter to the vicar, or the priest, thanking him for all his help with the funeral and stuff. And I've got that letter.
Oh, my word.
I know, it's odd, but it's, interesting.
Do you have a room for all of these strange things?
Well, they're all tucked away in bits. I used to frame them at one time, but that's a bit of a mistake if you've got any windows at all because they fade quite quickly. So now they're tucked away in books and things like that.
You just take them out occasionally and just observe them.
Well, I mean, a woman came to see me in the West End doing a gig, and she got in touch ahead and said, we've got this French franc that George Formby signed during the war. Which my dad had for years, and we're moving house now, so we're probably just going to get, dump it. Do you want it? So she came to the show and then came and saw me in my dressing room and presented me with this franc.
This is wonderful. I wonder if we should put a shout out to any Isle of Man people saying, have you got anything strange that you want to gift to Frank? Offload.
I bet there's some George Formby memorabilia knocking around the island. I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm thinking Bee Gees. There's got to be some strange Bee Gees stuff, hasn't there?
I forgot about the Bee Gees, yeah.
Yeah, born and bred.
I'm visiting, again, I don't know where anything is, but Russian Castle sounds really interesting.
Yes, Castle Rushen, yeah, in the south of the island. Will you have time? Because I know this is you keep adding dates to this tour, don't you? So you've got quite a few dates to be getting through.
Yeah, well, my management is very keen on making as much money as they can before I expire. So, yes, we are adding lots and lots of dates. But it would be a shame to go to the Isle of Man and not soak it up a bit, you know.
And then
I
if you
just, sorry, I got very interested in the English Civil War and reading about it. And there was I'm sure you know all this, but they were on the royalist side
Mhm.
and they held out for ages against the parliamentarians in that castle. And I think the woman who was the head of the family was the main sort of leader. So it sounds like a really interesting story.
Oh, I hope they give you time to explore because I think you'd probably get quite a lot out. Well, you just have to come back. You'll have to come back
Yeah.
for an actual holiday.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, have an ice cream on the prom or something. I'd love that. So let's come back to the tour then, because of course this is the 30 Years of Dirt, which I'm guessing is referencing the song, of course, Three Lions, but I think is also a bit of a nod, isn't it, to the early days of your career?
Yeah, well, I've been doing stand-up for, I mean, it's a little over 30 years now, but about 30 years. And it was always very rude. That's what I was kind of famous for as a stand-up comedian. And then I've made some attempts in later life to become slightly more sophisticated and more or less failed. So now it's a sort of mix, I suppose. But it's still fairly adult in parts.
What do you remember of your first gig then?
Well, my very first gig was for the Birmingham Anglers Association.
Of course it was.
I was hosting a show, and I don't remember getting a single laugh for the whole show. And I really thought that I would be catapulted to stardom after one show, and I wasn't, basically. So it's really very, my memories of the first show and the second show was, believe it or not, I went back to the Birmingham Anglers Association, and just to make it even worse, I did their New Year's Eve show. And they'd all been given small plastic trumpets to herald in the new year, and instead they used them to get me off.
It does beg the question, what made you want to carry on doing it then, Frank?
Well, what I'd done is I got so excited about being a comedian that before I'd done any comedy, I booked a room at the Edinburgh Festival for the following summer and paid £400. My life savings at that time was £419. So I basically emptied that out. And so I couldn't quit then because I'd paid for this room in Edinburgh. So I had to keep going because I just couldn't live with wasting 400 quid.
And obviously it worked because, here you are now. And this tour is, as we said, we keep adding dates. So it's clearly still extremely successful. And I'm guessing this means that you sort of never tired of it. You still really love it, don't you?
No, I sort of wonder if I don't love it a bit more even than I used to. Because I like everything around it. On tour, I like, well, like we've been talking about going to the Isle of Man. I like seeing different places, and I sort of combine the tour with a historical visits, and so yeah, it's a bit like a holiday as well as doing the comedy. And obviously I love doing the comedy. It's going really well. People are turning up, people are laughing, what's not to like?
Well, exactly. And how have you been warned about our various superstitions and things that you need to be aware of before you come to the island? Has Pierre made you aware?
No, I think Pierre is very happy for me to walk into a trap. What should I be wary of then? Please help.
I don't know if I should now. Okay, I'll tell you. So first of all, if you're coming by air, you'll go past a little place that we call the Fairy Bridge, and when you get there, you have to say hello to the fairies. Genuinely, this is a thing. And if you don't, then apparently it's like the whole penny thing. You will all day have bad luck because they're very mischievous, the little people. So this is, and genuinely, Manxies will not go past this little part of the island without saying hello to the fairies because they're genuinely scared of what might happen. So even on the bus, if you're on public transport, you'll hear people murmuring under their breath, "Hello, little people," as they go past the bridge. Yeah.
I love it. I'll definitely say hello to the fairies.
So ask your driver for the right point on the trip. And then the other thing, whatever you do not say the rodent word that is 3 letters. So the sort of large rodent that nobody likes.
Yeah.
Do not say that word on the Isle of Man. If you do, and you'll see the entire crowd probably stand up and whistle and spin on the spot because they have to do that if you say that particular word.
Oh, wow.
I know, we're a strange bunch, Frank.
That's good to know. So my 20-minute sequence on the Pied Piper of Hamelin could be a problem.
No. Oh,
no, I'm not a joke.
Yeah, you're doomed. You're absolutely doomed. Maybe change that. I mean, that's the thing, though, isn't it? You talk about the content of the show, because so much prep will go into it, I'm sure. But I'm guessing every single show is going to be different to an extent, isn't it?
Well, because I like to talk to the audience a lot. I don't see any point in standing in front of a room full of people and not, getting to know some of them as individuals and finding out a bit about them. So that does make the show very different because, you never know what you're going to unearth when you start asking questions. Like there was a couple in the audience a few weeks back, and she was a bit younger than him. So I asked her how they met, and she said, I was working for him. And I said, I know the whole thing. He was the boss. He was in the office and all that. And she said, no, we weren't in the office. And then I carried on probing. And eventually it turned out that he'd married the babysitter. The audience gasped. But we managed to talk about it on and off all night. You just got to be careful that you keep it. You have to monitor them and make sure they're still going with it. Yeah. I don't want to torture anyone.
If they look like they're sliding down their seat and trying to kind of get out of the place, then.
No, they weren't doing that. I was studying them closely. But so you never know what you're going to get.
So we need to be aware of that if we're coming to this gig on the 3rd of November, which I'm sure will be absolutely brilliant.
Just be, that's all.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that does make it all fresh, doesn't it, getting the audience involved every time. And then I'm presuming then it also potentially gives you more content for future shows because as you've just done, you can sort of reference that, can't you?
Yeah. Also, we're talking about things to see on the Isle of Man. I've seen some photographs of the Gaiety Theatre and that looks pretty amazing in its own right.
It's very special, actually. It's a really, really beautiful place. I know I was involved in the film festival for some years over here, and we brought over John Hurt and we took him to the Gaiety Theatre, and he stood on the stage, and I'll never forget, he was sort of looking out into the crowd, and he started crying, and he just said, I can feel the history in this place and all the people that have been on this stage. It's a really beautiful place. So I hope you have time to have a look around it. I know they do tours of it as well. So I'm sure they'd allow you a tour.
No, it looks amazing. I'm not promising tears.
If you don't cry, you can't come back, Frank.
Okay, fair enough.
So what else can we expect? I take it, is it going to be sort of something of a reflection of your career then, with it being called 30 Years of Dirt? And is it going to be a reference to Three Lions at all?
Well, the thing is that the modern trend in comedy is to write very themed shows, which follow a close theme. And they're almost like one-person plays, really. And I am more of the old school. I'm a bit more musical. I basically like to go on and just make people laugh as much as I can. My technique is only slightly up from tickling, really. So I do refer to the fact, that I've had a career which used to be based on rudeness and it's gone a little bit cleaner. But basically, it's me trying to be as funny as I can, as often as I can.
But that's essentially what we all want, isn't it? And it's certainly in recent years has been proven that audiences just want to feel happy, don't we?
Yeah, but I think it's I like the fact that people do comedy shows now about personal tragedies and all sorts of things. And I like that, but it's not really for me. I don't know if I have the level of seriousness in my system to carry it off.
Are you sort of a jolly person constantly then?
I always think I have an interior of cork, really, in that I'm always fairly buoyant. So when I've had terrible times in my life, I still have somehow managed to just, keep fairly jolly. What I am is probably shallow.
Oh, that's a really beautiful reference, the centre of Cork. Use him to stop up a dam.
Exactly.
Oh, well, we're really...
Having said that, I'm a terrible swimmer, so it doesn't work completely.
Well, we can't wait to have you here. We really can't. I have to ask you to do something for me, if you wouldn't mind, Frank, because myself and my partner, every Christmas we watch Flint Street Nativity. It's one of our absolute faves. Please, will you do me a laugh, 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 chat, chat, chat?
Well, I don't even remember how I did it, but I think it was basically that, wasn't it? Just chat, 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 chat.
And then falling over.
Yeah, I have fallen over. Didn't you hear? Just especially for you.
Oh, just now. Oh, you see.
Yeah.
See,
I've got the crown on and everything. I mean,
oh my God.
I'm throwing myself into this.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you. You just made my day. So you will be here 3rd of November. We're very much looking forward to it. And Frank, I really hope it's not the only time. I hope you come back again, even if it's just so that you can have a tour of our island. We'd love to take you around and show you the place.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm looking forward to meeting the fairies. And I'm remembering what word not to say.
Well done, that man. You'll be fine.
Okay.
Lovely to speak to you, Frank. Thanks ever so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I loved it. Bye.
Manx Radio's 1 to 3, tended by Ramsey Garden Centre. Open 7 days a week.